Thanks for joining us, everyone. We are happy that you are here for the Tippie College's webinar on Resume Rehab, how you can shift your resume towards a functionally based resume. So, hello, and my name's Barb Thomas, and it is my pleasure to coordinate today's event. But before we dive into this topic, I do have a few things that I want to make sure you're aware of. So first off, we have a full year of webinars planned, and we're going to start off on August 21st with Tippie faculty member Ann Campbell. Now, she will discuss how Amazon and other delivery companies coordinate their deliveries. So if you are like me and you always wonder, how did I get that item I just ordered last night? If you're wondering how all of that happens, this is the webinar for you. So just watch the chat. I'll put a registration link into the chat so that you can join us on August 21st. In addition, this year, we will be presenting an entrepreneurial series. Now, this is in response to suggestions that we actually received from you, our audience goers, who filled out some questions about those types of topics in that post-webinar survey. So see, the webinar survey, we do listen, we take your suggestions, and this year, we will be coordinating the entrepreneurial series. It'll happen in September, November, January, and April, and it will cover everything from side hustle how-to how you can actually finance your startup. So watch your emails for information on these and other Tippie webinars. Now, today's program is part of our ongoing career series. If you missed any of them, now don't worry, because they are all available on the Tippie College's Alumni Resources page and on the Tippie College's YouTube page. The career webinars cover a variety of topics, everything from salary negotiations to career pivots. And I'm going to tell you that there is an amazing webinar from our speaker today, Cindy Meis, on how you can improve your LinkedIn profile. Again, watch the chat and I will provide links for your reference. Now today, as I mentioned, we will be exploring a functionally based resume with Cindy Meis. Cindy is the director of the Tippie College's Undergraduate Career Services Office. And in this role, Cindy works with our undergraduates on their job and internship searches. If you or your company have a job or internship that might be perfect for a Tippie student, please reach out to Cindy. Her email will also be added to the chat. Now, I'm going to give you a little hint. Yesterday, I did review Cindy's content, and we are looking at a very valuable webinar. Now, some of you had submitted questions in advance, and Cindy has worked some of those questions into her presentation. But we will have time for questions, and we will address as many of them as we can. So please use the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen to submit your questions, and feel free to use the chat to communicate with us or with others. And with that, I am going to turn it over to Cindy Meis. Cindy?
Well, I better unmute myself. Thank you so much, Barb. I appreciate the invitation to be here. To Barb's point, if there are topics that you want to hear, make sure you're letting us know in the chat, the Q&A, or at that survey at the end of the program. I am ready to kick things off. We have about 27 slides to cover, but the nice part of this whole thing is I will be sharing these slides with Barb along with any notes that I have put into the presentation. So you'll have that full access to the information that I'm talking about, and then it'll also be posted to the YouTube channel. So I'm Cindy, and I have been with the college for about 20 years, and I have worked in a lot of different areas from sales and marketing to budget and client services across a lot of industries, healthcare, technology, financial services. And one of the things I realized right away is that my chronological resume was actually getting too long. So I played around with this functional style resume and have been using it for several years because it highlights these skill areas. It highlights expertise and information and details that I want to highlight as I'm progressing through my career. and it allows me to rearrange things as I want to showcase them. This can be really good for someone who is later in their career like I am, mid-career and making a shift. It actually can also be used by an early career professional. And so I'm hoping with some of the slides that I'm sharing today that I can give you some do's and don'ts and also some structure in order to how to approach this. So if there is anything that you want me to take a deeper dive in or you have questions, again, use that Q&A and that chat. So the agenda today, we'll simply cover resume types. So we're going to talk about the different types of resumes, as well as do's and don'ts for all resumes, taking a deeper dive into that functional resume, what they are, advantages. I'm only going to highlight 2 disadvantages, so it's not even going to get its own slide. I want to make sure to share some examples with you, and then again, a step-by-step approach to getting started. And then we're going to segue over to how to use these skill areas, that functional resume, in a portion of your LinkedIn profile. So if there's questions, we'll have time for those at the end. And so I'm going to just keep moving along. So there are lots of different types of resumes. And the one that most people are familiar with, or what we often call as a traditional resume, is that chronological resume. Most of the time, they are typically 1 page, but I want everyone to understand as we go through this program, a 2-page resume is okay. So it is not uncommon for that chronological resume as you get further into your career to turn into a 2-page resume. There's a design style or infographic type resume, and those are usually for maybe a marketing professional, someone in advertising, maybe leaning into social media, but they are typically very well branded. And it may be sort of a generic example, but if you're going to be applying at Target Corporation, that design style resume probably is red with a bullseye on it. So that's the type of resume you might be using if you were going into a product or brand management type role. There are federal resumes. These are showcasing things like your security level. They can typically be 3 to 5 pages because they are also highlighting KSAs, which are your knowledge, skills, and abilities. And it's very structured and very specific. And so if you are applying for a federal position or you using usajobs.org or .gov, I believe it's .gov, you're going to be doing that federal style resume. The CV or the curriculum vitae is something a lot of our international students use, and it can be used internationally, but it's definitely used in higher ed and academia. So this is a laundry list of experiences, poster sessions. It may highlight publications and different projects and research, and those can be many, many, many pages and often very text heavy. But I still would encourage you as you write a CV to make sure it is organized so that people can find the work that you want to showcase. There are non-traditional types of resumes, often called portfolios, but I do want to highlight they could be video, digital, or a portfolio, or even a GitHub that is highlighting maybe some coding or analytic abilities. We are going to talk about the functional resume today, and that functional resume may be 1 or 2 pages, and I'll make sure to show you examples of both. So, regardless of what style resume you are using, these are the things that I want you to avoid. So first and foremost is a template. So I often get the question of which template should I use? And there are lots of sort of forms and pre-designed templates out on the web. And often you might borrow one and they might have tables in there or specific indenting. I would tell you to simply use a Word document and then don't confuse a template with a sample. So what I would be providing you with is a sample of how you might want to format your functional resume. So templates are very different than using a sample. And I would love for you to just use a general Word document so you don't get caught up with and fighting formatting. Italics, use with caution. Most of the time, those are just for publications. I will see a lot of resumes where they're bolding, underlining, and using italics, and it starts to get a little fussy and a little messy. So I would encourage you to avoid italics unless it's a publication. Statements that are more than 2 lines long. What I'm really referring to is a bullet point. I would love for you to try to get as much information into 1 line in a bullet point. If you are going to go onto a second line, let's use as much of that second line as possible because that's valuable real estate on that page. Too much white space. Take advantage of the margins, lining things up on the left. This can be really challenging if perhaps you're early in your career, but that's where I would ask you to use one of our samples. And I'll make sure that Barb also includes a link to our career guide where there are additional samples for you. Personal information. You don't want those types of details on your resume. So date of birth, marital status, gender, health information does not need to be on there. References available upon request. This goes on to a lot of resumes a lot of the time. First and foremost, it will date you. So this is something that was used probably in the early 80s and does not need to be on your resume because they are online going to ask you for your references. You're going to input them probably at the time of application. They simply just does not need to be on that document. And again, it's taking up valuable real estate. We might need those 2 lines for more information. And then exceeding 2 pages, unless you're doing that federal document or doing a CV because you're an academic, it should not exceed 2 pages. I don't care where you are at in your career. We want to get the interest of the hiring manager and that recruiter. We don't need to fill them in on everything. All resumes should include dates, degrees, and employments and awards. I wanted to talk specifically about this because one of the questions that was posed before the webinar was about ageism. And a lot of candidates prefer to take some dates off of their resume so that they aren't perhaps the victim of ageism. But what we're finding is if the degree information does not have the date tied to it, there's a strong chance that the recruiter might think you have not completed or earned that degree. It is not uncommon for someone to say that I've taken 3 MBA classes or I have completed 4 credits towards this certificate and they have not actually earned that degree or that certificate. So I know you might be avoiding ageism, but I want you to make sure you're getting recognition for the degree or certificate that you've earned. So please include those dates. Be balanced. We want the dates to line up on the right side of the page. We want you to be using the left side of the page. The reason we move the dates to the right side is it brings the employer's eye across the page and to the lower bottom of the page. So it's there for very intentional reasons. Be error-free and spell check. Now, I know this might seem like a no-brainer, but I'm going to tell you right now, it happens every year as I work with students. If you use anything on caps lock and do all capitals, there's a good chance that it will not get spell checked. And you're going to send that resume out to various applications and realize 3 months in that you have a typo. The other thing you can also do is actually read through your resume backwards. And I know it's a very personal document, but if you can have someone else get eyes on it, you'll thank me later. We want it to be accurate and truthful. Don't feel like you need to overinflate the work that you've done. And if you say you're proficient in something, you better be proficient in it. I had a candidate once say they were an expert in Excel as a first-year student here at Tippie. So we had a long discussion if they were actually an expert, and I gave them lots of questions to tell me if they could manipulate Excel in all of these different ways. So we took that from being an expert down to being proficient, and that's okay. It doesn't mean that you can't learn and eventually become an expert. Be tailored. Doing the work to customize that resume is more and more important, and employers will notice it. Quantifying your skills and abilities and expertise. I actually think this might become even more important as you start thinking about that functional resume, because we want to make sure as we're dropping your bullet points into specific areas, they know how well, how often, and how good you can do those key responsibilities and functions. The other thing we want to make sure you're doing as you're saving a resume, whatever style that resume is, that you are saving it as a PDF so that once it's submitted, the formatting isn't being changed. There's no room for anyone else to mess with the details of that very personal document. And then also save it as your first initial and last name. And this is specific advice not only from Barb Thomas, but also from recruiters, because when it is labeled with your name, it makes it very easy for that recruiter to find your resume in their inbox as they're looking through it. And bottom line is, you are going to get lots of opinions about a resume. And so you're going to show it to 10 people and you're going to get 10 different opinions. I want to make sure whatever you do, it makes you feel more confident. So the functional resume, it focuses on skills and expertise, and rather than that experience and that chronological work. And this can be really useful for people who are changing careers, returning to work, maybe hiding a gap in their experience and diversifying their work experiences. But it can also be very good, like I said, for a young professional. And let me give you an example of that. I had an MBA student who came in and he had been a personal trainer, like spending time in the gym. He had a health sciences background and he was getting that business degree in the MBA space. And he jokingly said, he's like, I'm a gym rat who wants to be a business professional. So it was the one time in that MBA program where we did do a functional resume highlighting the skills and expertise he was getting at the gym, coordinating activities, working with program sponsors, doing work in their business office, but then highlighting his project work from the MBA program. And now he's using that gym and health experience within a pharma organization. But we kind of had to tip his work experience on its head, and the functional resume allowed him to do that. So some of the advantages, which I've discussed, are emphasizing skills over point in time. And one of these things becomes important to me because I've been with the University of Iowa for 20 years. And though I've had career progression about every 3 to 4 years, all of it looks sort of career services, professional development, and career coaching. So I wanted to start highlighting things like my experiences with budgets, with managing people, doing programming, and engaging employers. So the point in time didn't matter so much as these skills I was gaining as an employee with the University of Iowa. It's highlighting relevant experience, so it allows me to move things around on the resume. Definitely showcases those transferable skills because what you're doing as a camp counselor working with parents and students is exactly what I could be doing here as a career coach or advisor. It displays less relevant experience, so I might decide to take that out or highlight it maybe lower or less often on my resume. It definitely is hiring those expertise and again, making sure we're acknowledging results and details about those experiences. It also minimizes employment gaps and shifts. Like I said, returning to the workforce, making a significant career pivot, this functional resume can definitely work to your advantage. And it's very easy to customize because these parts of the resume become building blocks, which we will discuss later. Now, I did not put in a disadvantages slide because I don't think there's a lot of disadvantages, but I do want to acknowledge that there could be. So I'm grabbing my sheet of paper so I don't forget. First and foremost, one of the questions I get is like, well, what do employers think about a functional resume? And it's something they are getting used to seeing. The biggest thing is they might actually assume that you are trying to get their attention away from a gap or some experience that lacks relevancy. So as a candidate, all you have to do is be prepared to acknowledge that. It's okay if you decided to stay home with your children or something happened to COVID and you didn't want to be working at that point in time. Perhaps you are completely shifting gears. And so you just need to acknowledge that. And it's okay because it does become a part of your pitch and your story. The other question we get a lot is about applicant tracking systems. So applicant tracking systems and AI are two different things, and we talk about them as if they're the same thing. So I want to explain that first. An applicant tracking system is something typically an HR department uses to intake a application, parse and sort it, make it sure it goes to their recruiter, who can then follow up and decide if that candidate meets the qualifications, if they want to interview and move them forward. It's a way to track, applicant tracking system, an application so they know when it came in and when it either got hired, dismissed, or denied. Now, in that applicant tracking system, there might be some artificial intelligence. So there may be some AI that is searching for those keywords, and your functional resume will still have keywords that AI within the applicant tracking system can identify and get you into the yes pile. So I just want to make sure that if you are listening to this, applicant tracking systems and AI are different, but they can work together, and the functional resume will have enough keywords if you do the work to be successful in that candidate pool. All right, so now we're going to move into the bits and parts of a functional resume, and I'm keeping my eye on the clock, Barb Thomas, so I think we're doing pretty well. Okay, so there's different parts and formats in a functional resume. So it's pretty basic. You're going to have a summary or a highlight of qualifications. It's not actually an objective statement, though it can work like an objective statement. We want to make sure that this summary or this highlight is you as a candidate in a snapshot or in a nutshell. This also can transfer over into perhaps being your pitch or your 30-minute elevator pitch. It can be language that we will use in the LinkedIn later. But what I want to talk about is making sure that summary or that highlight of qualifications has matching keywords from a job description and language so that you can, again, get into that applicant tracking system and be selected. Now, if you are a University of Iowa candidate, you are someone applying to the University of Iowa, that could be an internal or external candidate. And I know there's some of you on this call, so I want to just acknowledge that. University of Iowa applications have a required qualifications and a desired qualifications. I want you to make sure if you are using a functional resume to apply to a university of position that all the required qualifications of that job are matched and acknowledged in that summary of qualifications. It makes it very easy for anyone reviewing your resume to say they've read the job description and they match the requirements, and you must match those requirements in order to be even considered. Now, if you also match some of the preferred or desired qualifications, please include those, because that is how you get into the yes pile at the University of Iowa. You must meet required and some desired, and then typically also the amount of work experience will also be that other factor. Now, other questions came up again as an early career professional. How do you get perhaps people to look at your resume more closely? So one of the things I would tell you, if you are a early career professional or going to be a recent grad, please go to the events hosted by your institution, the Pomerantz Career Center, Tippie, AMA, DSP, because the employers coming to those events are seeking early career talent and they aren't expecting you to have experience. Now, if you've graduated and you are competing with other early career talent, one way to sort of, maybe it's a loophole, is to say, I have 3 years of combined experience in volunteer management and career services. So maybe I only have 1.5 years of experience in customer service and career management, and I only have 1.5 years of experience in volunteer organization, but combined, I have 3 years. So you can use language like that so that they understand that you have this stack of credentials. Skills and competencies, this is where we'll spend the most time and maybe using those keywords. And then the functional resume, that experience of that history is actually a very small section where we're laundry listing where you've had that experience and it's just not as important. And then additional skills and information. We want to make sure we're providing unique skills and talents and interests. So pretty basic. That summary, tailor and customize often. Skills and competencies. This is a section that we will update and rename to match employers and job descriptions. And the reason I want to just highlight that before we go to the next slide is as you think about a functional resume and how you want to showcase yourself, it's not uncommon for account manager and customer support to be what one employer is asking for. And then the next employer is looking for client services and sales. It's virtually the same thing, but that words or those languages need, those pieces of language need to match the job description as we start thinking about the future of applications and artificial intelligence. Okay, so the next two slides are just examples. So I want to make sure you get eyes on an example. This is where I said things are going to get tiny, but you will get these slides so you can get a closer look. This is just a one-pager. It's got your basic contact information, that summary or highlight of qualifications. Most of these are 2 lines long, so you really can't get more than 3 details that you want to highlight. This one has 3 sections of functional skills, that employment history, and then the education and additional information. Very straightforward, very easy to read. You do have some design choices like where you want to line up the headers, but this one works really well because the name is centered and then the section headers go right through the middle of this page. This is for your early career. This is for someone who's had maybe 4 or 5 jobs. Now, you can have a 2-pager. So I want to show you this because it's very similar, and the things that I just want to highlight here are, again, summary of qualifications. We've got 3 different sections. They're a little bit broader, a little bit more, few more bullet points, and then there's going to be more employment history. But one of the things you want to make sure of, well, there's 2 things I want to tell you about, is first of all, if you're going to have a 2-page resume, and this would include a chronological resume, is just to make sure that the page break makes sense. You don't want to break up bullet points or change up sections. So I have sometimes had to move education around a little bit just to make sure that the way it fits on the page looks clean and easy to read, and we're not parsing things apart. The other thing is, if you are going to go onto a second page, I would highly recommend that you're using at least a third of the second page, but half is better. You want to make sure it's not just 3 or 4 lines, that you're really taking advantage of that second page. Otherwise, I would tell you to minimize what you're putting on that first page and keeping it to 1 page.
Cindy, before you go on, can you just go back first to that first example and just let them get one more just quick look at that?
Yep.
Before you move on. And a reminder to everyone that we are going to be providing a link to these slides after the fact.
You are going to get all the slides and all the notes that I put in my slides that I'm kind of peeking at as I present. And I'm making a note that we make sure we get you the career guide. Okay, I'm going to keep going because you're going to see these samples again and again, but you will get them, I promise. 2-pager. Very similar, just more depth. Okay, so getting started, you're actually going to use that chronological resume. So every line of your resume is actually a building block that we're going to move into this chronological resume. So I hope you first and foremost have a chronological resume, and I want you to keep having one. So even if you move into this functional style, that chronological resume will be really important because you can keep adding to it and really keep track of where things were in points of time. And you might decide eventually that you want to go back to that style. The other thing you might do is actually take that chronological resume and turn it into what we call a master resume. So that's where it does become 3 or 4 pages. You're keeping lots of bullet points, maybe from your job description that you applied to within that job, and you're keeping that because, again, those are building blocks, or that master resume will become your menu as you pick and choose and design your functional resume. So you get to move and rearrange and group and delete, and we're going to talk about that now. So this is the if this, then that slide. So if you were looking at your screen on the left-hand side, this is what you're starting with. It is your chronological resume. And you can do this on your computer by pulling up your Word document. I love to print things and get out my highlighters, so feel free to do that. But you're going to take that chronological resume, and I did this without reading any of the bullet points. So this is completely random, so that might not be fair, but I went in and I highlighted anything that I thought might be, for example, leadership, and I did that in blue highlighter. Then I did things like tools as gray, And then I did some other things as yellow. And I'm doing that because I'm trying to find the themes of these existing bullet points. So once I do that with my chronological resume, I can move them into these groups. So now I've got a blue group, a gray group, a yellow group. You might find you have 4 groups or 2 groups, but you're organizing these bullets into common themes. So it, like I said, can be 3 or 4 groups. Sometimes it's 2. And then you want to go through and start looking at and removing redundancies. And I'll use the example again. I've been a career coach in a number of roles. So if my chronological resume, I'm certainly writing coaching and advising students, coaching and advising students, coaching and advising students. So now I've grouped those 3 bullets and they're redundant. So I'm going to get rid of 2 of them because I know I've coached and advised students. So that will certainly end up in a category. You're going to rearrange and find balance because you might find something where you're managing is also your supervision of students, or you're managing a project versus managing people. So you might find that you want to move those around a little bit. You're also going to start seeing where perhaps you have gaps. So you might need to re-look at your experiences. If you can find a similar job description or the job description for that role, picking out pieces of things that were not maybe highlighted very well because you didn't do a lot of that before. It can also be like, okay, you know what? I never even knew when I started this job how much I'd be using Salesforce. So now I'm going to add Salesforce and my work with the Salesforce data and Salesforce data entry and reporting functions, because that was never even in my original job description. Now, as you're moving these bullet points around, one thing candidates really like to do is they like to say, when I was at Target Corporation, I did this. At the University of Iowa, I did this. And you do not need to do that. We want to simply know that you were implementing and optimizing inventory or analyzing spreadsheets. It doesn't matter where. Now, if you want to highlight industry, knowing that it was healthcare or retail or patient data versus inventory data, those adjectives matter, but the location does not, because that will be listed in your employment history later. And then the other thing is you don't need to go ahead and name these sections at this point. You might make a note that, okay, the blue things in blue tend to be my project work. The things in gray tend to be things related to technology and customers, or the things in yellow seem to be my budget and management, but you don't actually need to name those sections at this point in time. Then this is where it gets fun, because now we're going to start thinking about what these sections are and what you want to be calling them. So this is a sample job description that I pulled, and we pulled it because these are common qualifications and skills across 7 different job descriptions. So if you don't have a job description or a dream job yet, this sample job description is enough to get you started. Now, if you have some dream jobs in mind, you want to be a financial analyst, or you think you want to be a project or product manager, pull some sample job descriptions like that and start highlighting again some of the key words in that language, because that's key language that you're going to want to incorporate into that functional resume. So all I did with this one is take this job description, got out my highlighter, and I said, all right, they're looking for someone who leads a team, that can communicate, is getting results. Perhaps they're strategic, definitely leadership, decision-making, and they're looking for some technical ability. So I already know what some potential functional areas can be on my resume. So I know them to be leadership and training, or I'm sorry, leadership and teaming, communication and decision-making, analytical and strategic thinking, results driven, and then I'm probably going to add something about being a technical expert in the retail field. So it's these categories from that job description that are going to turn into my categories for that functional resume. So I know that the bullets I've put in groups now need to fall into specific categories, but the categories I'm naming and titling them from the job description. The other nice thing about this is once you've got these grouped and labeled, you can reorder them based off of what you want to highlight. So if they're looking for a manager and a sales professional, maybe you want to highlight the strategic decision-making and the results. So you move those up. If you are highlighting that you want to be part of a collaborative remote team, yes, the team collaboration goes at the top. So you are renaming these sections without changing bullet points and rearranging these sections based off of what that employer is looking for. If you feel the need to really customize and change up the entire resume, you do that in the summary of qualifications as well as those categories. You do not need to be changing the bullet points over and over and over because you will be paralyzed with making updates and it's just not necessary. Okay. Now, we're going to shift. I'm looking at the clock again. We're doing really great on time. I want to talk to you about your skill areas and LinkedIn. So, completing your LinkedIn profile, it's pretty simple. You want to think about getting a custom URL. You can do that right on the LinkedIn page. I encourage you, while I'm speaking, click over and open up LinkedIn. It will not offend me. I want you to see what I'm looking at, or examples, and the people noted in this webinar know that you might be clicking on their profiles, so it's completely okay. Click away. We want to make sure you're adding a profile picture, listing your jobs, strengths, and using those keywords, and the more connections you have, the better. So if you haven't already, I would love for you to tell me what you thought of this program, and I welcome a LinkedIn connection. And you probably haven't because you've been listening very intently, but I welcome that LinkedIn connection and I look forward to hearing from you. Okay, so you're going to grab that functional resume and you're going to start thinking about these skill areas for your resume. So you want to highlight team and collaboration and leadership, decision-making, communication, results, technical and programming languages perhaps that you want to know. And these are the details that are going to go into your headline, the about section, focusing in on your experiences, and then we're going to take these one step further to the skills and endorsement section of the LinkedIn profile. So I'm sharing with you some headlines, and I want you to look at all of these headlines. Mine is specifically focused on some keywords. Barb's gives you a real feel of who she is, and it almost sounds like her when you read that. She's a creative gal who gets things done. And you know what? She does. It speaks everything about her brand, and I love that. Amanda, she is open to work, and so she's a second connection, but putting that out there, but also telling me what problems she can help my organization fix or solve is brilliant. And then Tanner Moat, he's one of my just favorite employers. And I reached out to him because everything about his LinkedIn profile talks about who he is, what he does, and also highlights his values very well. So these are ways that you can, again, use that language, highlight who you are, and show a little bit of who you are in terms of personality. So if you're looking at the top section of your LinkedIn profile, first and foremost, there's the photo. So if you find yourself in Tippie, we have a photo booth. We would welcome you to come and use it. And you can get your photo taken right in the booth. And if you are not, just make sure it's a professional photo. There doesn't need to be anyone else cut out of the photo. We don't need to see your pets unless you're getting a job with rescue animals. And then as you save that professional photo, make sure you're also saving as, and then those keywords such as collaborator, strategist, retail professional. There are small algorithms in LinkedIn that will pick up on those language as you are saving even your headshot. The headline, it promotes your brand and value, goals, expertise, and talents. So again, you're just taking those headers from your functional resume and putting them in there in a way that feels good to you. You have about 120 characters to do that in, and it does increase your findability while also allowing you to sort of showcase that unique skill set. I would advise you to be direct and be specific. And then someday, those keywords are going to become your brand and pitch. But I'm going to tell you right now, that's a different webinar on a different day. These are all really great examples. And find someone in the industry or environment or job that you want and see how they're representing themselves on LinkedIn, because it's not plagiarism, it's flattery when you like what they're doing. I also wanted to share with you just a couple of the summaries that come right below the header section of the LinkedIn. And these are great ways to showcase who you are. And again, it's that digital equivalent of your elevator pitch. Short, concise. It can also bridge the past and the future. So again, if you are my student who was a gym rat and now wants to be a marketing professional, telling me how you're going to leverage this experience in order to be this type of world-class professional. It's okay to write it in the first person, and I statements are totally appropriate. It's recommended that it can be read in 10 to 15 seconds. So this is an error. People can kind of start putting a lot of heavy context in there, so be careful. But I also want you to think about, as we did in the previous slide, what problem can you solve? How do you use your functional expertise or those categories to support that? And using ChatGPT is also really helpful. Drop in those keywords, talk about what you want to say, and hey, ChatGPT, help me write an about for my LinkedIn profile. Once ChatGPT does that, please review it. Take out any flowery language and make sure it's in your voice. But don't be afraid to use those resources if you find you sort of have a writer's block. I've shared 2 experience sections with you. The one on the left is mine. So that's Cindy Meis on the left, and on the right is Tanner Moat from Principal. And I'm sharing these because this section of your LinkedIn profile does not need to be a cut and paste of your resume. You can use keywords to describe what you've done. I like to use lessons learned from my experiences, output, results. Tanner is using tools and skills that he's gained in those experiences. Because most of the time, the employer already has your resume, or they're just getting to know you in sort of a different view. And so take advantage of showcasing yourself differently on LinkedIn. We're getting real close, doing so well here. The last thing I want to talk to you about is just the LinkedIn skills and endorsements. Many people don't know this, but you actually can control this section. So for a long time, I did alumni events and student programs like Hawk's Nest and Make-A-Wish Game Day. And everyone was highlighting what a good job I did with events and programs. And though I am very good at those things, it's not what I wanted to do as I was shifting gears. So I had to go into my LinkedIn profile and delete all these endorsements. So you can edit those. You can edit the language used there and the skills highlighted. You can rearrange them and move them up and down. And you can even add to the ones that you want. So if you are very interested in getting into budgeting and project management, you want to make sure those endorsements are listed in that section. So you manage, edit, and delete and use those. Because the other thing is, I had my mom and my aunt, and they were telling me how great I was. And my future employer doesn't want to hear from my mom and my aunt. They want to hear from my boss and my coworker. So you control this section, and it can highlight the things that you want it to highlight. And I hope it's highlighting these sections of your new functional resume. All right, I've done a lot of talking. I know we have a little bit of time. So Barb, if there are questions, I will see what I can do.
Wonderful. Thank you, Cindy. And was I right? I think I was. This was a great presentation. Lots of information. I do think you'll probably want to go back to the YouTube video to just kind of rethink and recapture this. There's lots of things in the chat. There's a link to Cindy's email, her LinkedIn profile. Another great tool that she has provided to us is called Job Scan, and it helps you optimize your resume. There is a link to that career guide that she mentioned, but we will include a link to it in the section in the handouts on our website as well. So I do have some questions. We'll try to get to some of them. So here's an interesting one. My organization uses resume experience as a part of the formula to determine initial compensation offers. They have often emphasized including all past experience responsibilities in order to make sure you get credit for it. Are you aware of any impact on functional resumes on compensation assessments?
I don't, but it might be one of those, I never say it, but I'm going to say it today because you have to include so much. I think you can still do the functional style, but you are going to want to make sure that you are leaving everything on there in terms of the work history. So one of the questions webinar was like, how far back should I go? And you can start taking some things off your resume as you decide about duration or relevance. However, in your case, I would put as much on there as possible. And I would almost treat it like maybe a CV or a federal resume where because it's this internal and it's kind of dictated by your organization, it might have to be longer.
Great.
You're special. Make sure they know how special you are.
So here's another one, Cindy. So this person's been retired for 2 years, looking to re-enter the workforce. But in that period of time, that work gap, has done a lot of volunteer work. So any thoughts on how you describe volunteer work that is not a formal employment on that functional resume? Or does it really just not matter because you're not really saying what you gained where?
No, and that's exactly the point, Barb. You're not saying where you got it. So I think it's okay. You might have a section where it's, volunteer, I'll say volunteer management. So perhaps you're leading 10 volunteers to build a house, right? That can go into a certain subject. A recent grad might have a project section rather than a budgeting or a strategic planning section. So you want to highlight the skill or that takeaway. So when you're volunteering, are you organizing them? How many hours are you putting in? What are you accomplishing? Are you building a house or a highway? Are you decreasing the pollution in drinking water by 7%? So start thinking about if it's volunteer work, any work can be quantified and described. And then you're going to figure out again how you want to group that. And I would still list in your work experience, even though you're retired, I'd have that work experience, and then you might have your volunteer experience. So you can track that amount of time, have you been volunteering over 6 months or 3 years? Because that can make a difference, because when you volunteer over time, it also shows reliability and commitment to something.
Great. Now, we have a couple of questions from younger employees. So, we have questions about advice for new college graduates who express the frustration and the challenge with getting that first job and feeling like no one wants to hire entry level, as well as we have younger employees or potential employees, I should say, who are wondering how to summarize some of those internship experiences to demonstrate value.
So first and foremost, I want to just acknowledge you may not actually be wrong. I think there's a lot of people say they're looking for entry-level talent and they're not actually willing to hire it. And I think that is something that we have to, in my field, work with employers on to say, like, when you're saying entry level, this is what you're saying. And then you're sort of changing the rules when the applications start coming in. So I think that's a legitimate concern, and I hope that employers are getting better about that. Bottom line is, if it's project experience from the classroom or the internship experience, you really want to be very specific about what you did, how you did it, for whom, leadership, your peers, for a client, and how you did it. Were you using Excel? Were you using ChatGPT? How often did you do that? And I want to know all of those things in one line statements. So I want to know how you were doing that project, how often you were engaging with that client, and why. And so thinking about 3 very specific statements for any internship, 2 very specific statements related to any project, and don't assume that I know you went through 12,000 lines in Excel, but that is what's going to get my attention. And I will tell you, I think new grads in general, and maybe it's because we're all Iowa nice, so I hope there's some people from all over the country on this webinar, but you have to be able to toot your own horn. And it doesn't mean bragging, but it's getting those specifics, and people need to know that, because they will make the assumption the opposite way that you hope.
Right. Now, here's a question that deals with LinkedIn. And it has to do with, from 2 different people, we've got questions about the value of that open to work banner on the profile if they're in between jobs. Is it something they should embrace, or is it something that they might be, does that make them look less attractive? The other is it really worth the effort to get those recommendations from people about your skill sets?
So first, let's talk about the in-between, the banner. Let's talk about the banner. So I think it is nice to know when someone is open to work, if they've been laid off or they need help and they want to engage their network. I also think if you are a current student looking for an internship, or a recent grad, are going to be having that on there. So I actually like the idea of using that banner, but here's where I think people fall short. And it is very scary, because you are really putting yourself out there. But I also think then you need to engage the platform and post things regularly. And it could be, as a current student looking for an internship and you're open to work, talking about a project you just finished. Super excited to be selected for the Henry Fund. So you have to take and engage that platform instead of just having that label up there. If you've been laid off, saying, my work situation has changed and I'm super excited to hopefully be able to use my expertise in Python for a retail organization. And you need to be engaging that regularly. And that is how you make LinkedIn work for you. So that's the thing about the banner. Now, the second question was about those endorsements. I like them because I think people will look at them, but there are some recruiting firms that aren't allowed to look at social media. So it's a little bit like a cover letter. Some people love it and some people hate it, but I don't think it ever does you a disservice. And if you're going to have it, I want you to manage it.
Great. Now, here is one comment from the chat that I thought I'd just share with everyone, is that as a state of Iowa HR employee, if we receive a functional resume, we may ask for a chronological resume to determine an offered salary. So just something to keep, and there is a reminder, Cindy told you, keep the chronological. Listen to Cindy and do as she says, but here is a reason in that you may, in the process of getting a new job, have to provide all of that.
And it's not uncommon too. So you might even apply, and many organizations will still have almost like a form application that you have to fill out anyways, and it will be easier if you keep that chronological resume.
Exactly. So then there's a couple of questions that really kind of hit to mid-career. How is a mid-career resume different from an early career resume? Or at what point in time do you stop listing things that you did in college?
So the mid-career resume, I'm going to make an assumption that we're mid-career, but we're not switching. We're not switching career. So your mid-career, you should start seeing advancement, and that even, it could be advancement across functions. It doesn't mean you have to become a manager, but it has to show development, I guess, learning, maybe honed skills, new skills. So I use my own career as an example. Though I've been with University of Iowa, my role, even sometimes laterally, has continued to change and evolve. If it's working with a new population or focusing on new tools and resources. And so that sort of indicates to your future employer that sort of intellectual curiosity, willingness to learn, and it also diversifies your thought in the workplace. So mid-career, making sure you're staying fresh and focusing on new and different things. And it doesn't always have to be technology. It could be mental health in the workplace. It could be related to anything that actually even is of interest to you. So I know we originally, a lot of people are like, well, what about AI? And AI is easy, but mental health could be something else. It could be developing your Gallup strengths and how they work with your team, because now you're a manager. So think about what interests you as well, but refining and honing and continuing to be curious. And then the stopping of putting things on your resume, you do have to get to a point of like, does that even matter? So I worked at Walmart all through college, about 38 hours a week, and I was a customer service manager and a cashier. And for a long time, that on my resume was brought up in every single interview. They were like asking about this and the customer service and all of these things. And then I got to a point in my career where I wasn't going down a retail path, and I was not interested in being in that kind of environment. And it didn't actually impact where I was going anymore. So it made it very simple to take off. Now, you also want to think about like, well, how long was I there? Is it going to show a gap? Because you could even have it listed on your resume. It doesn't mean you've got 87 bullet points about it, specifically in a functional resume. So there are some judgment calls, and push comes to shove, ask a friend. No one needs any high school stuff on there. I can tell you that pretty directly.
That's great.
No high school stuff.
No high school. I'm going to do one last question. So how should I list dates on jobs when the transition overlapped and there's some vague dates because of during COVID? Is there a good resource for knowing beginner, proficient, and expert levels for skills as well?
Well, when we talk about dates, you got to design dates that work for you. So some people will just put the year, but I highly encourage at least the month and the year. And if things overlap, they overlap. And if things are wonky because of COVID, that's okay. And you don't have to apologize for that, but you might have to answer questions about it, and that's okay. So I would say this to people too, let's say you got fired and you have this gap, like it happened. You might get asked about it. You're going to say, I was let go and now I'm doing this, or here's how I'd like to move forward. And that's the end of the conversation. So don't ever feel bad about your situation, but be prepared to discuss it briefly. About the proficiencies. So most of the time people are sort of like beginner or proficient. If you're going to say expert, you might want to do a LinkedIn Learning or a Coursera or something that will actually legitimize the sort of that testing or that level. Now, if you have taken 87 years of Spanish, you lived in Mexico for 6 years and all of these things, I'm pretty sure you're going to be proficient without getting any sort of licensure. So do what's safe when you are acknowledging it, in case someone asks you to do whatever that skill is at the expert or proficient level.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Cindy. This has been a great presentation today. Our webinar has been recorded and will be shared on the Tippie College's website, on our alumni resources page, as well as on our YouTube page. And we will send a link to everyone who registered for this webinar with a link to those pages. The web pages where we will also share the slides and the career guide. Now, when our webinar is over, which is in just a moment, you will see a survey in your browser. Please take a few minutes and just give us a quick feedback on what you thought of the webinar, but then also provide ideas for what else we can do. This is how we can improve our programming. And at the Tippie College of Business, we're all about providing education both to students, but to our alumni, and we're very devoted to lifelong learning. So Thank you for attending. Cindy, thank you for a great webinar. And as always, go Hawks. Thanks, everybody.